Ben Unsen here. Today we're going to talk about chord voicings on guitar. Specifically, we're going to talk about a style of chord voicings typically relating to seventh chords, referred to as drop voicings. You might have heard the terms drop 2 or drop 3 used in relation to chord voicings, and today we're going to investigate what this terminology actually means, where you can find these voicings on the guitar neck, and most importantly, what you can actually do with them. I'll be using just a C major 7 chord for all of our voicing examples today. But remember, you can apply the theoretical principles of all of our drop voicings to any quality of 7th chord, major, minor, dominant, diminished, or any others that you can think of too. Let's begin with just a basic C major 7 chord in root position. It would sound a little bit like this, with the notes C, E, G, and B. C is of course our root note or first degree, E is our major 3rd degree, G is our 5th degree, and B is our major 7th degree. These are the basic chord tones that form the structure of the chord in root position. But beyond just root position, you have 3 additional inversions. First inversion, second inversion, and third inversion, which is quite a stretch. Just as our root position voicing began from C, first inversion begins from our 3rd degree E, second inversion begins from our 5th degree G, and third inversion begins from our 7th degree B. The voicings that I just played for you, all of this root position, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion, are typically referred to as close position voicings. Close position simply means that these voicings occur within a range of no more than 1 octave. Now you might have noticed that there were some pretty wide stretches in some of those close position voicings. Now this can be a little impractical when you get past the initial root position close position voicing, especially once you get to first inversion, where you'll see that there's a big stretch from the notes B to C. And this continues as we keep going up in the inversions. It doesn't get much easier. It would be much easier to play all of these inversions on piano because the notes are right next to each other. So what we can do is we can jump right into using drop voicings to reorganize the notes within the chord to create a voicing that will fit much better on the guitar neck. Now this is really important before we go any further. All inversions that we discuss throughout this entire lesson will follow this same convention. Root position will always begin from the root note C. First inversion will always begin from the 3rd degree E. Second inversion will always begin from the 5th degree G. And third inversion will of course always begin from the 7th degree B. When we looked at our close position voicing of C major 7 in root position, we talked about each note in the chord in terms of numbers. C is the 1st degree of the chord, E is the 3rd degree of the chord, G is the 5th degree of the chord, and B is the 7th degree of the chord. These chord tones are derived from the scale degree numbers of the C major scale. However, for the purpose of creating a drop 2 voicing, we're going to use a slightly different numbering system for the same 4 notes. Instead, we'll be numbering each pitch in a C major 7 chord as a voice from highest to lowest pitch. B will be voice number 1, G will be voice number 2, E will be voice number 3, and of course C will be voice number 4. If G is voice number 2, then what we're going to do is we're going to drop G down an octave, from the 8th fret on the B string down to the 10th fret on the A string. Now because we dropped voice number 2 down an octave, G is voice number 2, that's where we get the name drop 2. Now this is also a little bit of an awkward fingering, so let's change it around to right here. This particular voicing is considered to be in second inversion. Now you may ask, how did we get from a closed position, root position voicing of C major 7 to a drop 2, second inversion, C major 7? Remember, as we discussed before, all inversions throughout this entire lesson will follow the same principle. Root position will always start from C, first inversion will always start from E, second inversion will always start from G, and that brings us to our second inversion, drop 2 voicing of C major 7. We can follow this drop 2 C major 7 voicing in second inversion down the neck to see what the other inversions would be. So this one begins from G, first inversion begins from E, sounds a little like that, beautiful. And of course, root position begins from C. A very common voicing and a beautiful one that works in almost any context. Let's play through all of the drop 2 voicings in all inversions over a C bass note. For our drop 3 voicings, we're going to follow the exact same process that we followed for the drop 2 voicings. We're going to begin by numbering all of the pitches in a root position, closed position, C major 7 chord, from highest to lowest. So the highest pitch, B, is voice number 1, next is G, voice number 2, next is E, voice number 3, and next is C, voice number 4. This time we're going to drop voice number 3, which is E, down an octave, from the 9th fret on the G string down to the 7th fret on the A string. That leaves us with the notes E, C, G, and B. And it's a bit of an awkward fingering, so let's move it down to here, starting from E on the 12th fret of the low E string. We have the same notes, much more comfortable. Following our same convention that we established earlier, remember that an inversion beginning from E will always be first inversion. So that's why this beginning from E right here is a first inversion drop 3 voicing of C major 7. Now if we wanted to see what the root position voicing was, we'd bring it down here to C and we'd have a root position drop 3 voicing of C major 7. And that might just be a bit of a familiar voicing for you right there. Beautiful, works in a lot of situations. So let's play through all of the drop 3 voicings for C major 7 in all inversions. Drop 2 and 4 is particularly interesting because this time we're not just going to be dropping one voice down the octave, but 2. You'll see in just a moment that this is going to present us with some voicings that have a great combination of fourths and fifths. So I think this would be an example of wide interval voicings. So let's work out how to get a drop 2 and 4 voicing happening. If B is voice number 1, then we leave B right there. G is voice number 2, so we're going to drop that down the octave just like we did with the drop 2 voicing a moment ago. E is voice number 3, we're going to leave that right there. C is voice number 4, so C is going to come down an octave. I'm currently playing C on the 10th fret of the D string, and it's going to come down to the 8th fret on the low E string. So that presents us with this sound, absolutely beautiful. The problem is that the fingering itself is a little awkward. So instead of playing it like this from the low E string, let's play it right down here, starting from the 3rd fret of the A string. You might have noticed that this particular voicing has a C in the bass note. Now, following the convention that we established earlier, if the voicing begins from the note C, then we're in root position. So that gives us a drop 2 and 4 voicing of C major 7 in root position. And the 3 inversions that follow this root position voicing are really fascinating. Finally, we have my favorite of all of these drop voicings, where we'll be dropping voices 2 and 3 down the octave to create, you guessed it, a drop 2 and 3 voicing. This time, if B is voice number 1, it's going to stay exactly where it is. G is voice number 2, so that's going to have to come down an octave to the 10th fret on the A string. And that gives us a drop 2 voicing you might recall from earlier. Next up we have voice number 3, which is E. So to achieve a drop 2 and 3 voicing, we're going to have to move E down the octave, which for now we're going to take down to the 12th fret on the low E string. Now that leaves us with this sound. Nice sound, but a big stretch. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it all the way over here to the 7th fret. E at the 7th fret of the A string. And I think it sounds better and feels better right there. As you may have noticed, the root note of this voicing is E. So because it starts with an E, that gives us a drop 2 and 3 voicing of C major 7 in first inversion. First inversion always starts from E, so that's how we determine that. With the other inversions of drop 2 and 3, you can get some really beautiful sounds, so let's check them out now. And that's it. You can begin to experiment a bit with all of these voicings by improvising with them. You can try putting them together in an improvised piece for yourself, sounding a little bit like this. Don't be afraid to experiment with these voicings. Try to find as many places on the guitar neck as you possibly can to play them. And most importantly, start making music with them as soon as possible. I'll see you next time.